want to get used to writing in that environment.
The software also has the handbook if you need to use it from time to time during the exam. So get used to that as well, because it's not the easiest thing to navigate. And I wouldn't recommend every time you do a question you pull open the handbook. But if you do need to use it from time to time, just to double check on something. Or one of the things that as you go through the process, people will tell you is, for instance, for revenue recognition, what you can do is take the criteria from the handbook, copy and paste it into your response, and then respond how that particular situation meets or doesn't meet particular criteria as you answer the question. So there are situations where you do need to use it, but I wouldn't recommend every question that it's not like an open book exam. If you treat it like an open book exam, you probably will not pass. But
You can definitely use it.
yeah, you can use it. But
Some people say you should never go into handbook. Once you go to handbook, that's all you're gonna say. I was in the handbook quite extensively, and as long as you monitor your time, it's good. I didn't like copying and pasting though because the formatting was weird.
Yeah, Terrence is big on formatting.
Formatting to me is really important. It's not important to the writers at all, but to the markers at all. But I like
marking Terrence's case.
Marking my case was a lot easier than marking the third guy we studied with was his cases were so messy, it would be the worst thing to mark.
Yeah.
Just going back to the formatting issue, in terms of doing the actual exam in SOA, when you're submitting it for one thing there, how important is formatting? Do you spend a good chunk of your time structuring your response, like paragraphs or point forms?
It's not important at all. The guy that we studied with actually did better than us on all the exams, and his exams still looked like garbage by the end of it.
Formatting was not content.
Yeah, formatting wasn't. It's not important. I just learned the keyboard shortcuts to format quicker, and it actually didn't take time. They always chirped me for having proper quants that look nice.
Quants would have commas and
I only formatted because I couldn't follow my numbers unless there was commas and unless there's bold here and there. So that just worked for me. But if you can not use commas, you can just not use commas.
And I think part of your question was paragraph or point form. It is, I did point form for SOA and UV. It just helps you keep your thoughts concise rather than rambling on just to the point. As you go through the process, you'll learn certain ways to structure your responses. For instance, now controls is what weakness, implication, recommendation. So you had 3 bullets: weakness, implication, recommendation. Done. Next control. If you use point forms, it just keeps everything concise. Whereas if you start writing in paragraphs, you start to treat it like work or writing like a professional memo. It is a professional memo, but at the same time, it's an exam. You're trying to get marks, as many marks as possible. So I stuck to point forms. I think there's a question here, and then we'll come on this side. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were the main reasons that you think people weren't successful on GCAM? That's all you mean.
I think the biggest thing is that people before they went to write the exam, they just psych themselves out. Whether it be the environment or just losing confidence. Some of the things that the other presenters already talked about. You have to be confident that you will get through this, and you will. A lot of this is just in your head. Some people who start to panic or are man, I studied, but I don't have this, or they're cramming the night before, things like that. I think if you're doing that, then you're setting yourself up unnecessarily to succeed. So, I don't know, I think,
yeah, man, just stay cool.
Yeah.
When they say doing 8 hours a day, 9 to 5, we pretty much did 9 to 3-ish. It's just really knowing how well you're doing and just not freaking out. If you need to study less. If you need to study more. One of my friends who wrote the year before me, she knew she needed to study a bit more, and that's okay. You don't have to stick. It's not a rigid schedule. Just be relaxed. And like I said, seriously, come to terms with failing is okay. Because I think after you figure that out, you're gonna be fine. You're not gonna be freaking out about it. the actual York or for the for the third party?
I think so, but you should double check with them. What for the ICA or CPA or whatever, when you sign up, if you're unsuccessful on the CKE, I think they do refund you your SOA registration. Pardon me? I'm not sure about that for the third party providers. I'm not
Maybe
sure
I
what
want
I
to
asked.
ask them.
Yeah.
That's more. One guy in our class had trouble getting in immediately, but he just put himself on a wait list and he somehow got in. Because people fail, right? So they're not going to show up for the summer. So he got in on someone else's. Sorry? What do you do for you can't get the dance floor? You have an online component, right? Like you can do online. I think. Like, I'm not sure. Did we end up talking about the okay with not doing third-party provider thing? I think I would not have been able to pass had I not gone to a third-party provider. But I also didn't listen that much when I was actually there.
But it's kind of like what David was saying. Like you go, but like they tell you all this. They tell you all this stuff. A lot of it is useful, but sometimes.
The biggest thing I've learned, and the thing that I think that the only class that I really got a lot out of was the first class when we talked about outline. Like outlining is key, because if you can't outline, you're just gonna get lost in the question. But so I mean, like if you can't get in and you don't want to take or you don't want to do it, like I wouldn't panic. There's a lot of resources online, but once you find one resource, stick to one and just follow it. Like everyone's gonna have a different like method of writing. Like I think in diploma or master's or whatever, there was one like circle outlining or whatever. Like I'm sure like that works for some people. If that's what you're comfortable with, just do it and just stick to circle outlining. Like that didn't work for me, so I just stick to one method. I guess if you can't take the full course, I don't think it's the end of the world. Yeah. But and like that's the way the actual York University stuff will help too. Any other questions?
Yeah, I look like past exams, like the stuff you guys done in the third party places. Did you use any other resources for studying for CKE and stuff?
Sorry, what did you say?
Any other resources did you use for studying?
Like our firm was good because they gave us everything from all the third-party providers. I read the UFI blog. I think there's like a website called the UFI blog. Not really, no. And I think they're okay with not doing it.
How many times do you do a mock? Like, let's say you do the first and question.
For CKE, right?
Yeah, I'll start thinking. And then, let's see, you debrief them. Would you go back to those questions later on, or like once you did it, you just
I think so. You're talking about like reusing questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, I didn't reuse questions because I just went to I wanted to get myself as much exposure to the various types of questions that I didn't want to like go back and try doing the same question again. But a clarification on the 10 question approach. That one is only when you're not doing a walk. Like when you're doing a walk, treaties usually go from 1 to 100, whatever. But when you're just studying off of questions, I did the 1 to 10. But I didn't reuse questions. I tried to find new questions.
They're like question booklets and then they're mock exams. They're different. Mock exams are the actual 100 properly distributed, and there's like question booklets that you can get that have just, like a load of assurance questions, PMR questions, you can cherry pick your own. But yeah, I never redid a question ever because it gives you a false sense of security because once you're familiar with it, it's like playing that quiz up, right? Like once you know, like you're gonna answer the questions and feel so good, but like you really don't know the answer. You just remember it. So, but you'll see a lot of questions that are similar. Yeah.
Do you know how you mentioned Edward had like a fake sense of overconfidence for CKE? Does that apply? Did you have any experience with that for UFI, or is it all?
CKE, like we're terrified. I was terrified for CKE. But SOA I was definitely overconfident, and for UFI I was correctly confident. So it does apply. Don't be overconfident. Like the amount of work that our team, like me, him, Shabam, and the other guy put into this SOA was not advisable. Like it was bare minimum, and not just because I don't know why, like we were just overconfident, or I was just particularly overconfident. So like it could have really like screwed us over had we continued to be overconfident. So like I guess don't be overconfident ever, but be confident.
Like that being said, like 1 week prior to like the SOA or the UFI even, like we were at a point where we were like, give me the exam now. Like that's okay. Like you're not necessarily overconfident at that point. It just means you're at a good point. Like you would want the exam. Like that's good. You're ready for it. So
Like I think the three of us knew we were going to pass the SOA. And after I wrote it, like I never freaked out about passing. I think it was the same thing for UFI. Like I know a lot of people are like really scared, maybe just like being a diploma, which is great. That was awesome. Like people were talking about like, oh, I was freaking out the week before. I think for me, like I kind of came to terms like, you know, I'm okay with failing, but I know I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass.
I think maybe what you meant was like you mentioned how some of the external providers are easier for CKE and
Oh, sorry. Is that what you asked?
Yeah, it's fine. No worries.
oh, we can answer that too.
Oh, like for SOA?
Yeah, you mentioned that Densmore was easier for CKE.
Oh, no. Densmore is fine. It's only CKE questions.
Yeah, like CKE, like once they got to doing SOA and UFI prep, the DCS design questions were pretty representative of like actual exam questions. Sorry.
No worries.
Some more advice. I remember like in diploma, I felt like really nervous about the cases we're writing. They're not really that representative of the actual UFI because they were specific on one topic. Like I remember external cases I thought were really hard because they're just 100% focused on counting, and then IT cases were just like overkill on IT. Way too much IT. Audit questions were. I actually liked the audit questions. I thought the audit exams were pretty good. Audit questions I thought were the most like.
Our question is IT for studying for you, because like, there's just a lot of things that we don't think about that the rest of us, and
So on IT, like he'll go through like cloud computing and all that stuff. Like that's not really relevant for the case writing. The big things are like controls, like IT controls. Like case writing is big on controls. There'll be like controls like financial reporting controls, IT controls.
Computer doesn't have a password.
Yeah, like very basic stuff, but you write it on the exam and you'll get marks for it. So with IT, like it's not like you have to really know your IT, but you should know the basics, like keeping your server on offset, like stuff like that. Like something that's common sense, but it's not like if you didn't take IT in school, like you wouldn't know. Like it's nothing.
I found with the class we took it was overkill. But like still go to class. I mean, it's good to practice writing exams.
We do a lot more IT at Waterloo than most other schools. One of the schools, historical strengths from a research perspective, not the boards from the area, there's lots of IT people in the area, so hence the emphasis on IT in the undergrad and grad program relative to most other county programs as well.
Everyone does really well on IT on mock exams. It's kind of easy. Right? We grew up doing it.
Yeah, and the cases kind of like tell you to write about it. They'll be like, this person has access. Everyone in the company can access this. They have one computer. It's located in the registration. Like it's very so you don't need to be like a computer scientist to figure it out.
Just a question about how you've been able to
have learned in the last like 5 years at school in 1 year. Like seriously, like I never been confident with accounting until after I finished at UFI. I'm like, holy crap, I actually know how to do accounting. It's not that hard. Consolidation is really not that hard. After you finish the UFI, you
So the level of consolidations that you learn in like undergrad and even like parts of the external reporting, that's too in depth. Like on the cases, on the CKE even, you don't have to like consolidate a company like straight up.
like it was a consolidation.
But it's like it's not like you have to get all the parts correct, and it's like you get the majority of it, you get the structure of it. It's way too detailed what we learn in the classroom as opposed to the actual meetings. To answer your question, from my perspective, I just learned to write more efficiently. Like that was the biggest thing I took away. And now at work, when I'm like writing memos, like before, I would be like, oh man, writing a memo, like all this language, all this stuff. Now it's like very precise, very, I guess, to the point, and just. So that was the biggest thing I took away. Like, yeah, I learned some technical knowledge and stuff like that, but I think the biggest thing I took away was just writing efficiently.
I guess the last thing is, like, I thought the full year was pretty fun. So, like, I think it's something you have to look forward to. After CKE, it's actually pretty fun. Like, you do SLA, finish that, and you have like a month off until UFI. And then UFI is pretty much, UFI studying is like a month off in my case. You're like 2 months off. You should like book vacation for after the SLA or something like that, and just do something fun. Just like if you're like, I didn't do a UFI, like a post UFI trip or anything, so I just did like stuff before the UFI. And I would say actually consider like thinking of doing stuff like that, and just take advantage of not having to work. It's pretty enjoyable.
Thanks for all the questions.
All right.
That's it.